Hi everyone, it's Lori. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be antiquing my oracle cards. This is the Wychwood Oracle, which I just got, and it's absolutely gorgeous. You can see here some of the cards. But the problem that I have is that it is stark black and white. Now, from the Etsy listing, it looks like it could be a little bit maybe ivory or parchment colored, a little bit off-white, but it's not. It's stark black and white, and I did know that before I bought it, and I was okay with that. And, I mean, it's gorgeous, but I think the designs and the overall feel of the deck, it's begging to look old and used and, like, it's been used for decades and passed down through generations of fortune tellers, and I don't know, it's begging to look like this. So I'm going to show you how I went from basically this to this. And here's the back of it too. So I do want to give out a few disclaimers and warnings. As you can see, I'm doing this with the Wychwood Oracle, and I have not done this with any other deck yet. So I can't tell you if the technique that I use will work on your deck, any other deck. Every deck has different cardstock, different lamination, different printing and inks used, all that stuff. So I have no idea how this technique will work with other types of cards. I can't even tell you if this will work on your Wychwood Oracle. There's so many things that affect how a process turns out, how long you might soak it, or how much ink you put on, how much you sand it. All kinds of things can affect it. So I'm putting out the disclaimer saying this is what I'm doing on my deck. I take no responsibility if you ruin your deck. So that is actually what we're doing here. We are pretty much destroying the card. I mean, we're going to be sanding it and soaking it and staining it and kind of like bending it on the edge of the table and, wearing out the edges. And I don't know if you can, how well you can see, but the ink is coming up off the card, and that's actually what we want. Obviously, you're only going to do this technique if you like the look of an old, damaged, worn, well-used card. This is what would happen to the card, if you were using it for decades, but I'm not willing to wait that long. So yeah, I just want to put that standard disclaimer out. This is what I'm doing on my deck, and you're welcome to try it on yours. I definitely recommend trying it on the extra, information cards that come with your deck. If you don't care about those, just try it on that. Do not try it on any of your main cards first. And just, test it out, see how you like it. You can also, if you just want to become familiar with the process, you can buy, $1 pack of playing cards from the Dollar Tree and just, try the technique out on that. Obviously, like I just said, it's not going to be exactly the same because every card has different lamination, different ink, and all that stuff. So it won't work out exactly the same, but you can become familiar with the process. Okay, so this is really simple. So I'm just going to walk you through one or two cards, and then at the end I'll show you how they all turned out for me. You only need a few materials for this. I brewed some tea, and I put it in a Tupperware that'll fit my card. I think I didn't maybe brew it strong enough, or maybe coffee would be better, although coffee can be more smelly. When I soaked the card, it didn't really pick up that much staining, which is why I then used walnut stain. I know it's very hard to see this label. This is by Sukineko. It's walnut ink antiquing solution, and I bought this over a decade ago, but you can find walnut ink in the craft store like Joann's or something. This is what actually gave it this beige staining. And I just have a pair of tongs here so I can get the cards in and out of the tea. And I have a sanding block. Now, a lot of people who antique cards will say to use extra fine sanding paper, and I agree with them. I just didn't happen to have any extra fine sanding paper on hand. I had a sanding block, and it's not I mean, it's pretty gritty. It's not super coarse, but it's not, I would not call this extra fine. It does scratch the card up, and that's really the look I was going for. So it worked for me. So take the finest sandpaper you have, or go purchase some and use that. You could always go coarser if you want more of a scratchy look. And yeah, other than that, you'll need some heavy books. And I did use some freezer paper. After I was done with the card was very wet from the tea, so I laid it between pieces of freezer paper and I put a book on top of it to keep it flat. And after a day or so I checked it and it was pretty dry by then. And I took the card out and I let it dry the rest of the way. You could leave it in there for longer. But yeah, the freezer paper just has this, you know, plasticky film over it that shouldn't absorb the water when it's drying. Yep, and that's pretty much it, and some paper towels. Okay, I'm going to take my own advice and I'm going to practice again on this information card here, similar to what I did here. Now, the first thing that I did was I kind of bent it and ran it along the edge of the table here. If you have a table with a more rounded edge, then try that. This one has sort of a straight edge, which makes it a little more dangerous because you might bend it in a way you didn't intend, but just go slow. And I think this just helps break up the fibers a bit in the card and just lends to the overall like well-worn feel to the card in the end, so it's not so stiff. And I do it on both sides, so I don't wind up bending it in one direction. Okay. Okay, after you rub it along the edge of the table, let me zoom in here a bit. That's when you can start sanding. Now, please go very lightly with this. You will take the ink off very quickly. Now, the goal here is to sort of rub off the lamination a bit and also to wear down the ink somewhat so it looks worn out. So you can either hold it and sand it or put it up against the table and sand it. I do it in kind of a circular fashion, and then maybe I'll do it up and down, but I do it very lightly. So now you can already see on the edge, right? Can you see that there? I put hardly any pressure on this, and that's what it did already. So go very lightly. If you have, you know, extra fine sandpaper, then you might have to do a little more to get a result. But like I said, this sanding block is a little bit gritty, so it's going to give me results immediately. Side. And you can sort of check your progress by shining it, by holding it against the light and having the light shine on it. You can see where it's not as reflective. That's where you sand it. And obviously you can also see how much you're wearing down the ink. How much you do this is up to you as you go for the look that you like. Let me also stress that by doing this, you are damaging the card and you're wearing down its protective layer. It's going to break down quicker in the future now. You know, you accelerated the damaging process, the aging process, and you also stripped it of its protection. So going forward, it is going to keep wearing down like any card would, but it has has less protection on it, so it's going to happen faster. So you have to be okay with that. Don't do this to a deck where you're going to be upset if you use it for a while and it just keeps getting more worn out. Some of the ink might come off some more, might get more creased and wrinkled. You have to be okay with that. That is really the point of what we're doing here. So you probably don't want to take off too much on this step because it will continue to wear down with use. Now I'm going to do the back. Exactly the same as I did the front. I'm applying very light pressure here. My sanding block has some dust on it. But yeah. So let's see if you can see how this is coming out. Do you see the edges there? That's with very light pressure and the ink just comes right off. Other decks, your results will vary. It might take more pressure to get the ink off. So you can see if I hold it against the light, it looks less glossy. Okay. At this point, I also ran it along the edge of the table again, just to break up the fibers a little bit more. And I also want to just lightly sand the edges, lightly, just to distress those a bit. Okay. Now the next step is the tea bath. Again, I'm not sure if this actually did anything for this card, but that was part of the process, and I think wetting it helped break it up a bit. So even if it doesn't really stain it, I'm going to do it anyway for all my cards. So just gonna, I know this is scary, but, and this card soaks up the water at this point because we sanded off the lamination, or some of the lamination. I made this a few days ago and it's been in my fridge, so it's cold now. I don't know if that'll affect the process, whether it's hot or cold. Oh, this is actually soaking up the tea less than this card did. I wonder if I just didn't sand this enough. It's okay, we'll just leave it in for a little bit longer. Oops. And then you splash tea all over your other cards. Yeah, I think this card actually soaked up more water than this one is. That's interesting. Okay, so then I'm going to lightly just pat that dry, very lightly. So let's put this aside. Okay, now the card is rather damp, and now I'm going to use my walnut ink. Now the way I did this the first time was I do not spray it on the card. Okay? I sprayed it a bit on this paper towel. This stuff is very strong, like that. And then I either dabbed it on here or I just dabbed the card onto the spot. Now take a look at this. See that? This stuff is very powerful, so just do it slowly and lightly. You could always add more, but it's going to get hard to take it off if you put on too much. After you dab it on, you just kind of want to work it in because you don't want streaks or spots. This is not accepting the ink or the tea as much as my first one. I wonder if I could still sand this off a bit. Probably shouldn't do that while it's wet, but let's see what happens. So that's really the thing here. You want to take off the lamination first, which I thought I did, but it seems that I didn't because it's just not soaking up anything right now. Doing this while wet is a little bit risky, but it really wasn't all that wet because it didn't really soak up the liquid. Now see here, I got a little aggressive with the sanding. Is this focusing? There we go. And it took some of the ink clear off. So really be careful when you're sanding. I don't mind that, but really, oops, just be careful. I wonder if I should heat my tea up, if that would help. Okay, let's try this tea bath again. And if this doesn't work right, I'm going to heat up the tea again. Because maybe it needs to be warm in order to soak in properly. I have the tongs, that's for when it was hot. Since it's cold, I could just stick my fingers right in here. Okay. That's soaking up more now. So yeah, when you sand, you do want to sand lightly, but you want to try to take off the top layer of lamination, which will allow the card to soak up the liquid. And then soak up the walnut ink. Otherwise, the lamination just rejects the ink. Okay, I could definitely feel that this card has soaked up the liquid. So, yay! Not so much down here. Whoa, don't do that. Yes, okay, this has soaked it up. Okay. I'm going to pat it dry lightly. Now let's go back to the ink. I'm going to spray a new batch here. Oops, oh, you're all out of focus. Sorry. Okay. Now we're starting to see it. See how it's coming out now? So I'm dabbing it into here, and then I'm sort of dabbing and buffing it into the card. You know, you can do it, slide it, and then it creates a streak going here, but you don't want to keep it like that. You want to blend it in. You don't want any spots or streaks. You want it to just be just an overall light antique look, not like you painted it on. And again, you can always add more, but if you overdo it, you're going to have trouble removing it. So you see how that looks when I dab it, and then I blend it in. And you do this until you like the look of it. You can put as much or as little as you want. Obviously, it shouldn't be perfect because it's supposed to look worn and aged. Let's compare it to the first one so we get a similar effect. That looks pretty similar. Okay, now we do the back. If you are having trouble transferring the walnut ink to the card, then you just have to spray a new spot. But then go very lightly because it's going to be very wet. It's a little bit harder to tell when you're done on the colored side of the card. Okay. Compare it to your first one. Looks pretty good. Okay, now all you need to do is let it dry, and you want it to dry flat. So what I do is I take pieces of freezer paper with the shiny side facing the card, stick it here, stick it like that, and then put a book on top. Or you can stick it inside the book and weight it down. This should work fine. If you're doing a whole deck, then you can, if you have any spare space on a table or your floor, lay out a long sheet of freezer paper, just line up all your cards, put another sheet on top of it, and then just plop books all along the paper. I checked this card after a day, and it was slightly moist still, but I still took it out and I left it on my desk because I wanted to look at it and admire my work and see if I liked it. And it dried out just fine after that. It's like slightly curved, but you know, so are the cards when you first get them. I'm eager to see how they all fit together as a deck once I'm done with all of them. We'll see how that goes. Oh, if something else you might want to do is edge the cards. You can wait till this is all dry and then decide what you want to do. I'm not really sure. After this dried, I edged it in black. I'm not sure if edging them in black after they're well worn makes much sense, because you would think the edges should be worn too, but you can also perhaps edge them with the walnut ink. You could try that. Rub them along the edge. If we don't like it later, we could always sand the edges again to take some of the color off after it's dry. And that's all you do. So let me do the rest of my deck and I'll come back and show you how it all looks together. Okay guys, it's the next morning and they're mostly dry, so I was okay with taking them out and they should just dry the rest of the way like this. Yeah, as you can see, they all came out with this awesome antiqued sort of beige parchment, ivory parchment kind of look to them, like old paper. I don't know if you can see there. It took about 2 hours to finish the deck. It was about 45 minutes to get them all sanded, and then the rest of the time was the inking. And by the time I was halfway done with the deck, I was just I wanted to get it done, and I would do 4 at a time, and I was not being careful at all with the ink. I was spraying it all over the table, all over the cards, and then I was able to just rub it in without a problem. You want to be careful. Test it out on your cards first. Make sure they're not too porous to do that. If they were too porous, they might have soaked up the ink too much, and it might have left little droplets, you know, if you went a little too crazy with the spraying. Mine were not too porous, so I was able to just put the ink everywhere and then just kind of rub it in. So not a problem for this deck, but just test it on your deck before you just go crazy with the ink. I don't think this will wear off too much with use. It should be pretty permanent. It does feel like there's a slight film on it if you rub it. It doesn't bother me. I'm guessing that will dissipate with use. Yeah, but I mean, if you do like this, it's not like it's all going to smear off. The feel of them, they still slide around pretty well. Slightly sticky on some cards, but really not very much. I mean, you can see they could spread out just fine. And here on the back, you can see where I got a little bit aggressive with the sanding on some of the cards, like over here. But I like that look. You can see all the edges. These all used to be black edges, and now they're all this brownish color. Shuffling is easy. It was easy when I got the deck, and it remains easy. These cards feel awesome now, honestly. They feel worn and aged, and that's what I was going for. Oops. It's hard to shuffle when I'm leaning onto the camera. Yeah, so this is no problem at all. You can riffle shuffle them, which is a little awkward on a small deck, but it works just fine. You can see they're very flexible. Oops. Hang on. I have an uneven, I split them unevenly. But yeah, no problem there. And one of the good things about antiquing a deck like this is you don't have to feel guilty about riffle shuffling your cards. So yeah, they bend beautifully, they bridge beautifully. No problems there at all. You can see how flexible these are. Just put this upright so you can see. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think that covers everything. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and that you found it useful. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. I might do more videos like this in the future. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you guys. Bye.